one of the greatest acts of love that we can perform during our lives is willing the good of the other. And
What do you mean?
we can make an act. We have free will, right? So we can use our will to will the good of the other, whether they're aware of it or not, by not putting them in a scenario where you're driving down the highway at 130 miles per hour, not just putting your life at risk, but everybody else's life at risk. So we have the opportunity in every day, not just in crisis situations. Okay. Not just in crisis situations, but every single day to will the good of the other, to lay our life down, to die to our self-interest in the service of other people.
This is a show for the driven, for the dreamers. This isn't for the make-believers.
I can want all day long, but my want has to become my must.
This is for the determined, the self-defined, for those ready to push fear aside, crush doubt, and unleash the hero from the inside out.
You are wonderfully made. You are beautifully fashioned. You are created with purpose.
This isn't just another podcast. It's about living a life that counts.
It's been a interesting time for everybody across the world to adapt to this scenario, and my wife and I intentionally made the decision when our kids were young to not homeschool, and now we are, and fortunately, though, I'm super grateful for the administrators and the faculty and staff of our school, because they have put together this just curriculum that keeps the kids especially my older two who are in junior high, keeps them in a good routine.
Nice.
Which is everything, because idle time is no bueno in times like these, so.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that. My oldest son, so he's a high school student. He's a junior this year. He works for Chick-fil-A. Well, restaurants across the globe have closed their indoor dining, and most have closed, period. But Chick-fil-A has still maintained a presence of drive-through service.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
This guy's getting overtime every week.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
He's that wants to go to work.
Yeah. That's so awesome.
Yeah,
we don't have that many Chick-fil-A's near us. We have one, but it's like 35 minutes away,
Where are you based out of?
I'm in the Monterey Bay area of California.
Oh, God, I love your area.
Yeah, so far they haven't shut down the beaches, but that's San Diego, which is 8 hours south of us, just shut down all their parks, trails, beaches, everything. So the problem is that you have all these spring breakers who are just not paying attention to
anything,
and it's not that they're going to get sick. It's the fact that they're probably going to get it, not have any impact from it really, and then pass it on to somebody who will end up in the hospital.
It's interesting. I probably have a very unpopular opinion on this, and it's I get it. I get it that it's awful. My thing is when it's my time, it's my time.
Yeah.
And there's not anything that when it's my time to go, there's not, I don't have a fool's mentality. Like, I'm not going to go do 130 down the interstate on a, driving into 4 lanes of traffic, because that would definitely help
accelerate that. Yeah.
Right. So so I don't practice a fool's mentality, so to speak, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm I think that, one of the greatest acts of love that we can perform during our lives is willing the good of the other. And
what do you mean?
we can make an act. We have free will, right? So we can use our will to will the good of the other, whether they're aware of it or not, by not putting them in a scenario where you're driving down the highway at 130 miles per hour, not just putting your life at risk, but everybody else's life at risk. So, an act of charity, John 3:13, right? The no greater love than laying one's life down for their friend. And or 3:16, sorry, 3:16. And so we have the opportunity in every day, not just in crisis situations. Okay. Not just in crisis situations, but every single day to will the good of the other, to lay our life down, to die to our self-interest in the service of other people. And it's a paradox, right? We as people of faith live paradoxical lives. And we have to be in the world, but not of the world. And so we have to strike a balance between exactly what you just said, which is the truth, that when we have to live our life, and we don't have control over when God's going to call us home. But we are not going to consciously choose to put ourselves in a situation where we're increasing not just the risk of that happening sooner, but also the risk of it happening in other people's lives. I just, if I can go on a rant for a little bit longer about this, I just watched a video. There's a great person on social media. I don't actually know what her name is, but her Instagram handle is Smart Her News, like smart and then HER News. And she's married. Her husband is Leif Babin, the co-author of Extreme Ownership.
Right.
And she just did this thing on social media, which created a perfect image in my mind. I live in California, right? So we're a high fire state, and we have big fires, as you know. And the one of the best defenses to stop a wildfire from spreading at an accelerated pace is to create, for these bulldozers to come in and to create fire breaks along the mountain path to literally stop the fire. And that's what this kind of stay-at-home thing is. And it has nothing contrary to what the media is telling us, it has absolutely nothing to do with the age, gender, race, religious orientation, political belief, etc. of any individual. What it has everything to do with is the fact that, unfortunately, because of poor leadership across the board, our medical system is not prepared to handle a surge of even 2% in any local community at any given hospital. And so it has everything to do with hospital management and resources, and absolutely nothing to do with who is going to die and when. Rant over.
I'm going to take a completely opposite approach of you.
Okay.
And I'm going to push on you pretty hard.
That's good.
I don't know if you know this, but once upon a time I was in full-time pastoral ministry for 15 years, and I have a divinity degree, which came from a more of an Arminian Wesley background.
Okay.
Which I'm not at all. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that out. Like, I believe free will goes about as far as you can throw a baseball. You don't get to choose who your parents were. You don't get to choose into what time and place in the history that you're born. You don't get to choose. There's so many things that you have. You don't get to choose whether or not you get cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't. You have zero opportunity in so many of the things to choose what comes your way in life. And so it's interesting on that subject, because if we can go a a little geek theology for a minute, and I have no idea when I'm going to start. And I'm just going to pick it up because this is a fun conversation.
Yeah, cool.
I'm just going to cut the podcast accordingly. At some point when we were getting our mics tuned in, but so who was he? Jacob Arminius was a contemporary of John Calvin. Arminian actually sat in Calvin's classrooms, so to speak. And before the idea of Calvinism ever came to life, Jacob Arminius proposed the 5 points of Arminianism. And the 5 points of Arminianism are all about, it's all about our choice. It's all about our response to God. It's all about a synergistic point of view. It's all about, God reached down from heaven, and man, while he was dead in his sins and trespasses, reached back up to God and said, okay, I'm in. And then that begs the question, can a dead man do anything? There's an idea for you to think about. So
I'm Catholic, so I believe that,
Oh yeah, you're not Reformed at all. If you're Catholic. Yeah, if you're practicing, for sure, like the Reformation is something to pick up. That's something to go to war over if you're Catholic. But in the providence of sovereignty of God, you really if you're honest, you have to consider. Okay, I didn't choose to be born where I would be. A dad, a business leader, or whatever, a social entrepreneur, in an era where the entire doggone world is going to decide to shut down all of a sudden, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as far as your point about love, and greater love has no man than this, than that a man lay down his life for his friends, and that was, of course, Jesus that said that in the New Testament. Yes and amen, that's true. Simultaneously, you'll remember back shortly after 9/11, the terrorist alert would be orange or yellow or hot pink or whatever the terrorist alert would be. And what you would have is, because there was so much fear in our culture in those days, months, weeks, and even years immediately following 2001. I mean, it's probably safe to say that the 2007 housing market crash was in some way a residual effect of what happened from the fear that was struck into the hearts of people in 2001. So it's something that I believe that we really have to be careful of right now. Is we really have to be careful of rebranding fear as common sense.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually.
I also think, now this one's going to have to be chewed on for a minute. I also think that we have to also be careful of rebranding fear as my expression of love for another. If I know myself to be a person at risk, if I have a history of, for example, if I have a history of asthma, or if I have a history of some sort of breathing thing, or if I'm prevalent to the flu, or if I have a weakened immune system, man, my 14-year-old, who I've seen intubated, who was in a breathing tent when he was a baby, right? Who's seen the photos and all this, like he knows his medical history. My 14-year-old has said to me the best thing I've heard: don't coddle your immune system. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And we're secluding ourselves, we're reclusing ourselves to these environments where I'm not exactly sure that it's the most healthy thing to do. Of course, there are the residual effects from the economy, but my thing is, it's just like wearing a seatbelt. If I go out and get into some sort of an accident and I'm the one driving, and the seatbelt could have prevented something horrible from happening to me, why should I be punished? I'm that guy. Why should I be punished for me practicing my own brand of stupidity? Mm-hmm. Right? As long as I'm not intentionally doing something to bring harm to another, So, I mean, there's all this grief about spring breakers and all this. And while I hear you, I hear what you're saying, and I see the posts on Facebook, and they drive me absolutely batty, because I'm like, okay, just because we've, one person over here feels like everybody needs to stay at home, and by the way, until what? I mean, exactly how long is this going to go on before the next thing comes along? How about this, for example? What if we find some sort of viral, what if we find some sort of antiviral for the current strain of this thing that we have? And what if, it takes our entire summer and we have to put 6, 8, 10 months of our lives on hold until some sort of antiviral is found for this thing? And then at about the same time, our summer is ending. Summer across the world is beginning, and somebody takes a plane ride to Australia. The strain mutates, and then there's another year the thing takes and works its way back to the world, or works its way back to this side of the world. So my thing is exactly how long are we going to perpetuate this brand of, I hear you about hospitals and health care.
Well, let me give you a little bit more background on why I have the position I have on it, because I'm kind of like in between. I'm in my office right now, outside of home, at work.
Nice.
I'm meeting all my clients virtually, though.
Okay. Basically,
I live on the same property as my parents,
okay.
And my mom is immunocompromised, right? She's 71. She's got diabetes. She is
high
risk, but she's also super strong. I mean, she was just getting ready to compete in a deadlifting competition called Iron Roses. Last year, she deadlifted 248 in her age group, and won her age group. And your
70-year-old mom deadlifted 248 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing, and that was after almost dying from bacterial pneumonia, like the previous year. She went septic, and so, I'm taking the consideration that because I love my mother,
right,
and I know that because I'm around her, and me being out at the bars and restaurants and stuff, put her at work. At the same time, though, I'm still like out there supporting small businesses, doing takeout, going to get coffee. So you have to strike a balance. But I love what you said. I agree with everything that you said. Actually. I agree 100%. We don't get to choose the families that we're born into, where we're born into, the eras that we're born into, the socioeconomic status that we're born into. But what we ultimately do get to do is respond to those scenarios. When we get cancer, we get to respond to that. When we lose somebody that we love, we get to respond or react. And going back, I'm sure you've read Man's Search for Meaning, but there's that stimulus and everything you described up to that point: socioeconomic status, year you were born, family, coronavirus, cancer, all of that are stimulus. And what we don't have happening right now in the world is that space between the stimulus and a response. Instead, we have stimulus reaction,
Explain that a little more. What do you mean space between? I think I follow you, but just so it comes.
So, how Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning talks about our power of the ability that we have to make a choice. We don't necessarily get to choose our circumstances, but we get to make a choice in how we respond to it. And so this between, what he says basically is, between a stimulus and a choice, is a pause, is a space where we get to consciously, using our God-given abilities, the powerful brain that we have, that we control. By the way, our brain does not control us. We control it. We get to use that to make a choice in how we are going to respond to it. So Viktor Frankl, sorry if you haven't read his book, go read it, Man's Search for Meaning. But spoiler alert, successful psychiatrist in
I've got it on my phone here.
Oh, that's so amazing. I actually got to get the audio version too. That'd be so awesome. Successful psychiatrist in Vienna, married, pregnant wife, his mother and father live with them. They all get rounded up by the Gestapo, sent to the Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm.
What?
World War II.
Yeah, World War II, get sent to Auschwitz. And on the very first day, his mother, father, pregnant wife are all put in the gas chamber and cremated, and he is sent to a concentration camp. And one of the most powerful things he came out from that camp with is this book, Man's Search for Meaning. The original title of that book was Nevertheless, Say Yes to Life. Okay? So to your point, John, nevertheless, say yes to life. Okay? And no matter what life throws at you, the last human freedom that no political party, no mean person on social media, no boss, no rude neighbor can take from you is the ability to choose our attitude and how we respond to things.
You know, it's interesting. My mom is immunocompromised. She is not as old as your mom, and she's not even as nearly. Dude, your mom's deadlifting 248. That's just awesome.
I'll find a video. I'll send it to you.
Dude, you've got to send me a video. I want to see your mom deadlifting 278.
And it was 248, and she did it like super. It was so light. I mean, she could have gone 250 easily.
Dude, so my mom's a different situation. My mom is well overweight herself. She has been for some time. My mom is she's consistently having some sort of health issues, and she has for the last decade. My mom's had health issues for the last 10 years. It came from cancer that she won. What sprung on some of it. She is in an electric chair now, and that's how she gets herself from one place to the next. Thank God for my stepdad, who's there to help her. And, he's kind of a big, strong ox who's able to load the chair and help her stay mobile and engaged in society and life. But, we've not seen our parents in almost a month.
Yeah.
My wife's father has had his fair share of health struggles as well. So like we've practiced that level of isolation from our parents. Now we don't live on the same land that they do, or within the same space. We're about a 55 minute drive from them, or from the restaurant we typically meet at in between. Right. But we've just not done that. And then there are the little kids. My wife's sister has a little boy who turns 1 soon. And he's had some, just kind of ups and downs, just getting started out in life. And so we've created that separation of space. So we've intentionally done that. My wife's birthday was a few weeks ago, and we hit pause on her birthday. And my wife's sister's birthday was just a few days ago. We've not celebrated any of these things. My kid's brother's birthday was this month. My younger brothers, that we have like 8 or 9 birthdays in our family in March. We've not celebrated one of them, and it's been, to me, it's been sad because, part of the thing in my choice of life is I think we should celebrate birthdays, because the celebration of a birthday is a celebration of humanity, and it's a celebration of what it means to be human. I think my position here, if I could attempt to be clear on it, I just hope that the masses don't use this as an excuse to shut down.
Me too.
That's what I hope, because Mike, there's not a lot of people like guys like us. There's just not. There's not a lot of people. Look, Facebook is huge and Instagram is huge, and TikTok and Snapchat, and these socials are massive, and they have the engagement and the following that they have because of what I think human nature is. Human nature is prone, you'll appreciate this, but maybe some listeners won't. We're told often to trust our heart, trust your heart, trust your heart, trust your gut, trust your heart, right? Gut, heart, kind of one and the same. If you take a realistic approach of trusting your heart, there's nothing more dangerous that you can do when it comes to trusting your heart. In one place, it says that the human heart is the most wicked thing in all creation. Right? What is that? Isaiah?
Yeah, I think it's Isaiah.
Yeah. The human, so you can't trust your heart. Trusting your heart is what gets you 16 and pregnant, or 14 and pregnant.
Yeah.
Trusting your heart is what gets you in some sort of almost unrepairable situation that it's kind of like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Well, you did it because you trusted your heart. So I think the default screen for most people, and this is where we have to be careful, the default screen, I think, for most people is to hit, hey, everybody else is doing it. Well, I guess I don't have to show up today either. I guess I to do anything to add value today either. Even the stimulus package that's being offered right now, I get it. There are some, like you talked about, frequenting the mom and pop shops and driving through and getting a coffee, or driving through and getting a sandwich, or doing those types of stuff. Hey, same here, man. I've practiced it as much as I could, as much as I can during this time to support those folks. So I get it that there are going to be some people who receive from this stimulus package. They're going to need what they get because there are single moms out there, or there are single dads out there, or there are grandmoms out there taking care of their grandkids, or whatever, granddads out there taking care of their grandkids, aunts, uncles, stuff like that. They've been laid off from their job, and they need this thing so they can go out and buy essentials,
Right.
They can go out and take care of, because oh my gosh, I had a job, now I don't. And for the last 20 years, I've been living to paycheck to paycheck. Now what do I do? Right. So I appreciate our political leaders. I appreciate our folks who are trying to put these things into place. What I hope is that it doesn't. Do you remember the movie, Remember the Titans?
Yeah.
There's a line in that movie, Remember the Titans, that has stuck with me ever since I've seen it. Coach Boone he benches Petey during the first game, and then it was the assistant coach who put Petey in on defense. And after that game, they were having this conversation in the coach's office, and the assistant coach said to Coach Boone, "Hey, no thanks needed, Coach, on Petey." And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then Coach Boone says, "Thanks. What are you talking about, thanks?" He says, "I come down on all of these boys the same way. And whenever you isolate, whenever you pick out, and whenever you try to upstage me in front of my boys, all you're doing is crippling them. And I'm afraid, I'm not afraid, but I'm hoping that for a lot of folks in life, this doesn't continue to enable that crippling of a person's drive."
Totally. This is the greatest opportunity to decide how each and every one of us is going to show up.
Yes. Yes, it is. Well said.
This is the impact moment, right? This is the moment where your potential, the word potential begins with the word potent, which means power. This is the moment in history, in our time, where we have the greatest opportunity to examine our God-given potential, and when it encounters fear, to decide if fear is going to send you someplace or if you're going to send fear someplace.
Yep.
Okay. This is the moment that we get to do that. And to quote another football movie, Rudy, I was in a room with Rudy Rudiger and Rudy. I was in a room with him, and I asked him, in that movie, Sean Austin plays him, right? And he gets the rejection letter from Notre Dame, and he crumples it up and he throws it on the ground, and then he storms off. And so I've always wondered, like, what was Rudy thinking in that moment? And so I asked him, I said, Rudy, when you got that rejection letter and you threw it away, what were you thinking? Because Sean doesn't say anything in the movie. And he said, Mike, that's a great question. I told myself I will find a way. And right now, we are getting rejection letters, essentially, right? We are being told to stay home.
Right.
We are, some of us voluntarily, some of us involuntarily, but in some way, shape, or form, we are opting out, right? That doesn't mean that you can't opt into something else. That doesn't mean you can't still find a way to develop yourself, to grow in your emotional resilience, strength, your relationships, your business goals, your dreams, your aspirations. It doesn't mean that on the other end of this thing, you can't come out a better, stronger, smarter, more powerful person. Because you can, if you choose to. Or you can binge watch Netflix, eat a bunch of potato chips, drink yourself to oblivion, be bored like your kids, not be creative. You can just react instead of respond.
That's extremely well said. We think about the J.R. Tolkien's. We think about who was the lady that created the Harry Potter series. What did she do? She sent her
J.K. Rowlins or something.
What
like
did
that?
She sent it to like 30? She sent her manuscript to like 38 different publishers, and
all said no.
Yeah, and she kept going back, and it was someone that she went back to that finally said yes, and now we have the Harry Potter series.
Yeah,
and how many, even with how many times did it take to create the incandescent light bulb? We don't know, because that number has been changed every time somebody quotes it, right?
Yeah.
So,
a lot.
Yeah, a lot. We have this opportunity now to practice resiliency at a whole other level. We have this opportunity right now to step up our game in a very big way into the world. And so, Mike, I want to ask you, for those who are listening, for those who will listen to this thing, what are some things that you're doing right now to leverage yourself, to posture yourself, to set yourself up for success right now? What are some things that folks can do? What are you doing?
I haven't changed any part of my morning routine. That's so critical, because it sets me up for the day, no matter what day it is. So I do the same thing. I wake up I follow this app that keeps me on a circadian sleep rhythm. So it basically wakes me up when I'm coming out of a REM cycle between 5 and 5:30, typically around like 5:10, 5:15. I make coffee for myself and my wife. We both go to our personal prayer corners. Mine is in my room. Hers is in our living room. And we have basically like 30 minutes of just dedicated prayer, where we're following some devotional or reading a book, or, and then I do immediately after that, I do some form of calisthenics type exercise, just to get the body flowing, right, and moving and energy, right. And so for me, that's been critical to maintain that routine. Now, if you don't have a morning routine, that is going to be one of the best things that you can do now in this free time that you have, because you have more. We all have, regardless if you're still working, we all still have the same 168 hours in a 7-day week that we had before this whole thing. You just have more capacity now than you did before in terms of how to use it, because you're not commuting to work, right? So a lot of people are saying, okay, well, instead of getting up at 7, 8, or 6 a.m. like I used to do, I'm going to get up at 8. Well, you just lost an hour that you can never get back in that day, in that week. What could you have accomplished in that time? So if you don't have a morning routine, it's critical to to get one involved. And maybe it doesn't have, if you're not a person of prayer, now's a great time to become one, but just some sort of morning routine. Of course, we've talked, I'm sure you've talked about the miracle morning with Hal Elrod and all that stuff in the past, but getting exercise, getting physical exercise of some kind has been a game changer. Getting outside in your neighborhood, just going for a walk. There's nothing wrong with going for a walk in your neighborhood. People are like freaked out about that, but there's nothing wrong with that. Don't go up to your neighbor and give them a hug if they're freaking out, but move around, get outside, get that vitamin D, do that, take this time to invest in your relationships in your household, play games. Last night I played a game with my two sons and my brother, who happened right before this. He just finished graduate school in Chicago and was moving back here to get to interview for a job at Stanford. And so he's living with us right now. And so last night we played Uno, all of us, and my youngest son, Charlie, is 9 years old. And he's like, can we play competitive Uno? And I'm like, what does that mean? And my brother, Joe, who's 25, you mean like this? And he like tackles him, and Charlie, who loves that kind of energy, and so he's like, yeah. And so they had this whole thing. And so you're just being creative. We got to eliminate excuses on the typical excuses of I'm too busy to invest in relationships, because now you're definitely not. And the other most important thing I'll say, John, and I'm working on this personally right now, is we are adapting, right? And so our patience is going to be tested in this scenario, and we might have the on the occasion to get kind of burnt out on all of this close time that we're having with our family and lash out at each other. My kids had an event like that yesterday where they all four of them kind of just went at each other for in the afternoon. And so we just sat home. We got home and we sat down and we had a conversation and we just said, how's everybody feeling? None of us have been here before. How's everybody feeling? And we went around. And my oldest, who's is graduating 8th grade and is not going to have an 8th grade graduation as it stands right now, shared that, and so we just kind of level set and got everybody on the same page. And then I told them that I'm going to choose mercy, right? If you feel like I'm not, if I'm being too harsh, I invite you to say, Dad, be merciful, Dad. Now, boys, I told my sons, I said, boys, when I tell you no Xbox, don't tell me be merciful, Dad. But if I'm being harsh on how I'm communicating with you and you feel I'm out of step in this environment right now, because this is a fire that we're all trying to manage right now, I invite you to say, Dad, be merciful. So give them some sense of autonomy at the same time. And so I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but those are just the few things that I'm doing to make sure that I'm accelerating in this period of time. And I'm getting ready to work on my second book, which is going to be another parable during this time. I might as well. I have time, right? I have more time than I would have. And so why not put it to good work? Oh, I lost you there for a sec.
No, I'm here. There are a couple things in there that I love. I love the idea of maintaining the morning routine. And I would even say this for some of you, for some people, because it's, your circadian and your rhythm is wherever you need to set that up. For me, I agree with you, Mike. I think there's most definitely, get up, tap into the spiritual, tap into the physical. I will tell you this, if I knelt down beside my bed for 30 minutes after I first got up, I would be asleep. Yeah. The way that I do it, the way I do it similar, I just combine the two practices. Yeah. So for the last years, man, I've been doing these Devos in the Bible app.
Oh, cool. Yeah. The YouVersion one.
Yeah, and I get requests all the time from people to do the Devos and the YouVersion Bible app, but I always just do with one guy, because if it's more than that, I'm going to spend 2 hours of my day doing Devos, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just find that I'm better when it's more qualitative than it is quantitative.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll do, I've got a squat rack in my garage, got a bench and some weights and a couple of barbells, and one's always on the rack and one's always on the floor. So this morning was supersetting bench and deadlifts. Yesterday was supersetting squats and deadlifts. So I'll do that a couple times a day, at least once a day, and it's that first thing in the morning right out of bed. And while I'm doing that, on my phone, man, I'm having Siri read the devotion to me.
Nice.
I'll just, you can select all the text, you can hit speak, you can do the same thing for the scripture. I'll add my comments accordingly in the discussion part after you do the Devo so that's my space where, you know what, I'm not out there getting juiced by, Megadeth or Gangsta Rap, Wiz Khalifa, which I like some Wiz Khalifa, but the morning, you know what I mean? And, anyway, so I'm kind of tuning, I'm kind of dialing in that way. A buddy of mine says it, one of our school principals says it so well, you have to set your triggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to set what you're going to allow to trigger you so you have to set yourself up for success in your own headspace. I love what you did with your kids. I love the idea that you brought them around and you said, okay, guys, how's everybody feeling? We did this yesterday with our, one of the things that we do is multi-state federal projects with schools, middle and high schools. And with one of our high school projects yesterday, we had 27, 28 people on a Zoom call. We went 90 minutes around the horn. And this is going to be familiar to you in the Dad's Alliance. We went 90 minutes around generative design and gratitudes.
Mm-hmm.
And we did breakout rooms for all three. We brought everyone back in. We're gonna move to a Zoom platform with our implementation with students in schools. And this was a way for us where we could get everyone just involved using the software so that they can become more familiar with the software. So I love doing that. Set your triggers. Mike, one of the things that I've done just to add to the conversation is I've given myself a stopgap on how much social I'm going to allow myself to consume. So the first weekend of this thing, a couple of weekends ago, dude, I got myself in just a messy head funk. At the time, we were debating whether or not we were going to cancel some travel plans as a family. I was bummed out about it. We were going to go to a place that I've wanted to go to since I was a kid. We found amazing flights, amazing place, edge of a cliff, overlooks a beach kind of, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was, a 5-hour plane ride past Miami, it's going to be like, let's go, kind of a thing. And I was like, oh man. So I kind of let myself get there, and I'm going to tell you, dude, all of the garbage on social media just did not help fuel that headspace at all. So I've limited myself to 5 posts on social. I will scroll to 5 posts, and I will not engage in dialogue and comments.
Ooh, dude, I like that.
Yeah, dude. I just, because I can't, right? Like, I'm going to get sucked into this vortex of wasted gray matter and lose brain cells, arguing some position if I allow So I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, which, part of that is me coming from a place where, I grew up in a place where I had to kind of learn how to take care of myself at a young age. So it's not that I want to be the boss, but it's also, good luck trying to boss me around, because I know how I've done, kind of a thing. So that means I'm not afraid of conflict at all, so I kind of naturally gravitate toward conflict which is not healthy. That's just, so I have to set my own triggers. And that's one of the ways that I've set my own triggers is I've said, you know what, I'm just not going to waste a ton of time getting sucked into these social vortex. Interesting. You mentioned the book. I just want to chime in on that. So we're doing the same thing. We've had a book project literally on our whiteboard, one of the whiteboards in our office. We've had this project on the board for probably 5 months, and we've yet to convert this thing into manuscript. And it's, you know, it's what
Now's the time, baby.
Dude, we're doing it. It's one of the projects we're leaning into right now. You were going to add something a moment ago, and I kept going.
Oh, I was just going to say that also on the social media trend, you know, that you can, one thing, if you're on social media and you want to, like, people forget that we can create fire breaks going back to social media, whether it's limiting your time or limiting the people that you interact with. There's a great feature, which I've been using heavily recently, where you can snooze people for 30 days, where you're not going to see anything that they post for 30 days and you can still remain friends. You know, I mean, we live in such like a what's that? You know, Adam Carolla, he wrote a book called The Wussification of America, basically, where most people want to like avoid conflict, right? They're not like you know. I'm like a 7 or a 3, so I don't know that much about the Enneagram, but I think I'm a 7 or a 3. And so I'm not afraid. I'm definitely an achiever, and I'm not afraid of going to get it. But like, we live in this world where instead of just, you're not, I'm not adding value to you. You're not adding value to me, but I don't want to offend you. So instead of unfriending you, I'm just going to snooze you for 30 days, or I'm just going to unfollow you. I'll still show up on your friends list, but you're not going to be on my news feed. So peace, everybody's happy. Like, what is up with that? Like, make a choice, people. I'm sorry. That's, I'm just going off. But like, we can create these fire breaks in the type of media and things that we consume. And you just talked about it. And that's so important in today's world. If everybody goes, I don't know when this is going to air, but if everybody goes to their battery percentage usage,
I'm gonna as soon as man, here's what I'm doing with these things. I'm not trying to backlog podcast recordings, and we're even gonna put this out on video. Cool. So this is
glad I cut my hair today.
Right. It looks nice. So this is, dude, this is probably going to go out like even tomorrow, like seriously.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
This week. Yeah.
So I want everybody, and I'm going to do this too. When you go to your phones and you go to settings on your phones and you type in, you search battery, right? You type in battery. I'm going to show you this in a second.
Battery usage. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, battery usage percentage.
Right.
And it's going to show you, and I'll show you right now. This is a confession moment. Good Catholic right here. Can you see that? It says Facebook and Instagram.
Hit show
21.
Hit show activity.
Show activity.
This is an exercise we do with kids in schools. We call it check.
In the last 24 hours.
All right, show me. An hour and a half on Instagram, an hour and 6 minutes on Facebook, an hour and 2 minutes on your phone, 49 minutes in messages, YouTube 20 minutes. You use Outlook?
I also use MS-DOS. No, I'm just
Well, I could show all as well, but mine's currently updating the.
Convenient, John. Convenient.
On purpose. I didn't know we were going to come here. I want to ask you something. You mentioned adding value to the world, and our interview it's not really been an interview. We just kind of turned this into a conversation, and I've enjoyed it. And what I've loved about this is giving our listening audience an opportunity to hear from a guy in Alabama and a guy in Northern California, 2 different parts of the world. Our states are handling things very differently. We are, and at the same time, it sounds like you and I are kind of responding similarly, which is pretty cool to hear. So thank you for that. That's an encouragement to me. But Mike, I want to ask you, because this is something that we've not done yet. What is that value that you aim to provide to the world? What is that? What is your give, man? If they want to connect with you, what are they going to connect with you over?
So whether it's an individual, a small business, an entrepreneur, or a corporation, one of the things I'm most passionate about, and the word passion means the willingness to suffer for something, is helping people answer or begin to address for themselves the 4 fundamental questions that each and every single one of us grapples with every single day. Who am I? How do I show up in the world? What do I do when I get there? And who do I do it with? And that's kind of the fundamental spine of my first book, Master the Key, which is a parable. And, who am I? In the book, it breaks down into the section on what's my story, my self-narrative. How do I show up in the world? What are my gifts? What do I do when I get there? What kind of action do I take? And who do I take it with? What community or communities should I be a part of and should I not be a part of? And so I help take people on a journey to answering for themselves or for their organization those 4 fundamental questions. And I'm not one that that necessarily possesses the answer. It says in the book of Proverbs that the purposes of one's heart are deep waters, and one with insight draws them out. Well, I believe that we all possess that insight. And there are those of us who have the gift of being able to ask questions of people that draw out that insight from within them, that helps them draw that insight out. So if someone engages with any of my content, whether it's my podcast, which I actually just ended in 2019 in December, or my book or my forthcoming book, or hears me speaking, that's the kind of content that they're going to hear from me, is how to begin addressing those 4 fundamental questions, which are keeping people up at night, which are keeping 85% of the global population disengaged at work, disengaged in their relationships, and from truly becoming who God created them to be. And I want people to become who God created them to be, because to quote this saint in the Catholic tradition named Catherine of Siena, who was like in the 13th century, she said, when you become who God created you to be, you will set the world ablaze. And how awesome would that be if the world were set ablaze, not because people are freaking out from the coronavirus and shutting down economies and worlds and communities and states and countries, but rather the world's ablaze because we are all becoming who God created us to be. And when we are leaning into that, no weapon formed against us will prosper. But right now, we have too many people in the world who are trying to be something that they're not created to be. They're trying to be something that someone said they should be. And therefore, when a weapon is wielded against them, they're getting battered and hammered down by it. And they wonder why, right? But I'm here. I feel like one of the core purposes that I have been on this planet to facilitate is helping people answer those questions so that they can get closer to becoming who they are created to be. And when everybody is living on purpose, they are living in the way that God has called them to be. So that's kind of it in a nutshell in 60 seconds or less.
You know what, dude, I'm going to tell you, you gave some insight for me in there to consider. I've often been referred to as a passionate person or a passionate communicator, or he's passionate about his work. And there's also been a lot of suffering come along with the passion. Mm-hmm. And the definition of passion, I've never thought about until you said it just now. I've always thought, hey, I'm passionate. That's a good thing. I'm excited about my work. I care deeply about my work. Oh, no, wait a second. Passion means that you're willing to suffer for this thing. Mm-hmm. You know, I even left the office yesterday It was a chore to get my headspace to a positive place. I decided to open up a piece of mail right before I left the office, and the piece of mail was not, well, it was something that got under my skin, you know, and it was something that I didn't see coming. And I was like, what really, really, you know, but you know, it's just that what you just said, Mike, I just experienced your gift in my life when you gave the definition for passionate. Mike, tell folks where they can find you. Tell people where they can connect with you.
People can email me at info@theimpactentrepreneur.net. If they go to that website, www.theimpactentrepreneur.net, they can listen to all of my past episodes. There's 195 episodes of that show. It's on iTunes and Spotify. It's going to be perpetual content. I ended that show because I felt like it came to what Dr. Henry Cloud referred to as a necessary ending. It was a beautiful rose bush that had a lot of blossoming buds, and I was trying to tend to them all. And in doing so, I was stealing from the buds that had the most potential to blossom into the most beautiful rose. And so I had to prune that podcast, and it was a very hard, emotional decision. But that's what being an adult is making hard, painful decisions because you're passionate about something. And so that's the impactentrepreneur.net is the podcast site, and also my email, info@theimpactentrepreneur.net. For speaking, it's just impactmike.com is my speaker website, and my social media handles are @theimpactmike. And I'm super active. If people are curious, I'm happy to engage with them. And of course, my book, Master the Key, is available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audio. It's been endorsed by some pretty epic people. You got Lou Holtz, Mel Robbins, Greg Amundsen, Cheryl O'Loughlin, John Gordon, some pretty epic people, and then some sports psychologists and Olympic athletes inside. It is a story. It is a fictional story that will lead readers to the truth, and I'm pumped about it.
Okay, so I'm going to have you on again just to pick your brain so that folks could hear how you connect. I'm assuming the Catholic connection helps you connect with Lou Holtz, but
I actually connected with him through the Washington Speakers Bureau.
Okay.
Bernie Swain, who was one of the co-founders of the Speakers Bureau, was a guest on my show. I knew that he represented him, so I said, hey, Lou's been a childhood hero of mine. I'm a huge Fighting Irish fan. And I would love to connect with him. And he said, well, you got to write me a formal invitation. You got to send me a formal invitation because he doesn't use email. And then I'll send it to him and we'll see what he says. And then I got a message back 3 weeks later that coach said yes. So that's episode, I think, 66 of the show. And it will forever be one of my most special episodes.
Dude, that's incredible. That's really cool. That's really cool. Mike, look, I know you got stuff to do. We'll transition here and wrap up. I appreciate you taking the time today to come on, to share, to talk to. Like I say, we're going to get this thing out quick. The content is relevant. It's for right now. I think it's really healthy for an audience to hear two guys who can enter into a forum and a format. You know, we really didn't hit the record button at any time, right? During our conversation, we didn't plan any of that on the front end. We just started chatting, and it happened. And at any time, I guess we could have hit stop and said, okay, this is not useful content, so let's start over. But we gave ourselves the permission to have that conversation. You know what? And here's the beautiful thing about it. And here's the encouragement thing about it. And I think for the listeners who's going to take away, you can engage in dialogue with someone who doesn't at the onset share your same opinions or ideologies or, you know, your system and, you know, belief system or views in the world, your worldview. You can still engage in a way that you can come out on the other side and be better for it. You can engage in a way. It's just like what you did with your kids yesterday. You brought them and you said, how are we feeling about this? You know, one of the things about this that I've learned as a married man is, you know, sometimes I will say to my wife or she will say to me, hey, this is our time. Are we spending our time the way that we want to spend our time? And if the answer is no, then you have to do something about that. You have to be mature enough. You have to say, you know what, this is not, it's not that this is comfortable or uncomfortable. It's just that this is undesirable or that this is unhealthy. So, man, I really appreciate you taking time to come on today.
It's been a blessing, man. It's been an honor to connect with you. I do have one final parting piece of advice for you, though.
All right.
You've really got to do something about that hornet's nest that's in your garage gym, dude, because you're having like an allergic reaction. You know, I mean, like, you know, I mean, show everybody your allergic reaction. You know, I mean, you got to really do something about that hornet's nest, man.
No, I told you about the little. Hey, I want to ask you this before we bounce. I got one thing for you.
Yeah.
Mike, and we're going to end it on this. For you, what does it mean to live a life that counts?
It means that I'm helping that I am picking up my own lamp. This is something that one of my mentors told me, that I am picking up my own lamp so that I can light the way for others. And I wrote my eulogy 2 years ago from the perspective of my son, who's now 10, but I wrote it from his perspective as an adult man, telling people, communicating to people that I was a light, that I helped other people's lights shine brightly by allowing the God-given gifts to shine brightly in this world so that others may see my Father and give glory to him. And if I'm doing that, I've lived a life that counts.
That's beautiful, man. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. Mike, thanks for coming on. I've enjoyed it. I can't wait for Zoom to process this video.
Boom.
Turn it right back around, push it out into the world. Bro, it's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to connect again.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, man. Have a great one.
Peace.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Life That Counts. Tune in next time for more insight with host John Williams.